Good morning. Today is what? Gimel is Daled Ir. Daled Ir. Tovshenayin Daled. The last share we had was Yud Aleph Nissen. And we're in the middle of the Mamar Pesach Tovshen Yud Beis Kimei Tzeischo Meretz Mitzrayim Aren Neflos in Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Aleph Tovshin Yud Beis. We are up to Eis Zayin on page Reish Samach Tes. Since we've had such a long overlay, I'll just give a quick update, if I may. Quick recap of what's going on. The Rebbe asked 4 questions. In this pasuk, Kimei Tzeischo Meretz Mitzrayim Aren Neflos, like the days you left Egypt, I will show you wonders. Question number 1 is, we know that the future redemption will be greater than the redemption from Egypt. So what does it mean, Kimei Tzeischo? That just like I showed you wonders then, I will show you wonders in the future. It seems that the wonders that are going to be when Mashiach comes, because they are greater, why are we comparing them to the miracles of Mitzrayim? That was question number 1. Question number 2, what's the emphasis on Ar'enu Niflos? I will show you wonders. Question number 3, why doesn't it say in the first person, the whole pasuk is in the first person, like the days you left Egypt, right? That's the way the pasuk begins, in the first person. And it ends off, Ar'enu, I will show him wonders. It ends in the third person. Why? The Zohar explains that Ar'enu, I will show him, refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. But the simple definition of the word of the pasuk is that it refers to the Yidden. What's the connection between the explanation of the Zohar and the simple explanation? The Rebbe began to explain there are 3 levels in miracles. Miracles that defy nature. Miracles that are clothed in nature. Right? But it's obvious that nature is but a garment to the miracle. And then there are miracles that are so clothed in nature that you don't even see that they are a garment. Afil ein balades makir b'nisei, that the one that within the miracle happens doesn't even know that the miracle happened with him. There's a miracle that's clothed in nature, like the story of Purim, for example, right? Where it's clothed in nature, but when you look at it, you see it's miraculous. But then there are such miracles that you don't even know, right? That they are taking place, which means to say that they're so clothed in nature that you don't see how nature is a garment to them. The Rebbe explained that also in the conduct of nature itself, we find a miraculous element, and that is the constancy within nature. Normally, things get weaker. Something that's finite gets weaker as it moves away from its beginning point. Entropy. It ebbs. As time goes on, it ebbs, and it ebbs, and it ebbs. In nature, even though it's finite, it's constant. The sun is as strong today as it was in the beginning of creation. Mankind reproduces, animals reproduce just like they did when the world was created, right? That aspect of constancy within nature is an infinite element within the finiteness of nature, right? So the Rebbe explained, similarly, when we talk about miracles that are clothed in nature, it's a similar idea, but the difference is that when we look at the finite, the infiniteness that's within nature, and we come to the conclusion that this is what? Something infinite. This is we need this boundless. You need to contemplate that. You need to think about it. But when you talk about a miracle that's clothed within nature, you don't need any boundless. You see that even in a miracle that's clothed within nature that we see, right? Like, for example, the story of Purim, it's quite obvious that there's something miraculous taking place. The Rebbe explained that there are 2 types of bittul. There's the bittul of Yichudei Ilah, and there's the bittul of Kabbalas Olam Mesiras Nefesh. Bittul of Yichudei Ilah means nullification that comes as a result of the fact that one perceives the unity of Hashem, and that everything before him is not. Which means that the one that is contemplating this idea has some relationship to the idea of Yichudei Ilah, and the Yichudei Ilah, this aspect of Hashem's unity before whom everything is considered as naught, is so powerful that what does it do? It overwhelms the person, and he is bottled. He becomes Uis Metzias, Bittul B'Metzias, similar to an Neshama the way it is above, or similar to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was Chochmah Da'atzilus. Then you have the Bittul of what? Of Kabbalah Sel Mesiras Nefesh. That is like a slave before a king. He wants to do what he desires. Avda Befkele Nichale, he wants to be free and he wants to follow his own desires and taivas. But nevertheless, the dominance of the king is so powerful that it causes him to be bottled, notwithstanding it defies his own characteristics and his own desires. So to the degree of how far the Bittul has gone, the Bittul of Yichudullah is greater. Why? Because it nullifies the entire being, the entire person. However, there is a deficiency in that. And what's that deficiency? That deficiency is in the fact that the bittul is because the person recognizes the greatness of the king. So in other words, the bittul is as a result of what? Of my recognition. Whereas the bittul of Kabbalah Sel Mesiras Nefesh means that over here, what is expressed is the balabatishkeit of the king. To such an extent, and notwithstanding that I want to do something else, I'm bottled before the king and I carry on, and I do what he wants. Says the Rebbe, similarly, when we talk about miracles that are define nature, miracles that are clothed in nature, right? So to the degree that the miracle permeates the whole being, as it were, that you have in a miracle that's beyond nature, greater. What does it do? It destroys the whole system. The system collapses. The system falls away. Why? Because the overwhelming presence of the Gilui Elokus is so powerful that it makes it fall away. But the deficiency is in the sense that what? That the system of Teva, as it were, recognizes the power of the king, and because of that, it becomes bottled. When we talk about the system of Teva remaining intact, it means that although it hasn't permeated completely, meaning to say, Teva remained Teva, it's just that Teva behaves, it hasn't changed its character, Teva. Teva remained as it is, just like the slave who remains a slave and wants to do what he desires. Yet, in actual fact, it conducts itself according to the way the Gilui Elokus wants, rather than the way the Teva wants. So what's going to be when Mashiach comes? A combination of the two. And we'll see in a minute how the Rebbe articulates that. So that's where we're up to. Based on this. So in other words, where's the truer bittul according to this explanation? The truer bittul is in the bittul that stems from Kabbalah Sel Mesiras Nefesh. Why? Because over there the bittul is because as a result of the elokus, as a result of the godliness, not as a result of what? Of the getlachkeit. I'm sorry, not as a result of the recognition of the one that becomes bottle, who recognizes the overwhelming power of the one beyond it, and that's why, for example, in the metaphor of the king, one faints. In Nisim Shalom Teva, nature faints, nature falls away, nature is bottled. Why? Because it recognizes the greatness of the Gilui Elokus. So because of whom is the bittul? Because I recognize that the power is so great. Whereas when we talk about the bittul of Kabbalah Oil, I remain who I am. Or Afal became. I set myself aside and I behave according to the one that is greater than me. So the truer bittul is when the bittul is as a result of the Elokus. Albeit, it doesn't permeate the whole being. Okay? So now how does that work with Chidush of Aran and Influence? What happens? So in other words, each one has a quality that the other one doesn't. Right? According to this we can say that the innovation that will be in this idea of showing wonders, which will be when in the time to come, which means that also the miracles that are clothed in nature will be in a manner that I will show you the wonders. The miracle will be seen. So it's also in the miracles themselves. Right? So it's not only what? That the miracle will be seen, so there's a technical aspect which will be different than it is now, but in fact, the miracles themselves will be different. In other words, there's a type of miracle which now only behaves in a certain way. In the time to come, there will be something new in the miracle itself. Why indeed does the nature conceal the miracle that is within it. Right? When we talk about what Nisim HaMalabash or whatever, miracles that are clothed within nature. Why does it conceal on the miracle? It's because nature, even when the miracle clothes itself within it, nature is the opposite of a miracle. This is a koyach, this is a godly energy of nature. This is a godly energy which is beyond nature. So therefore, when a miracle clothes itself within nature, when a koyach aliki, which is beyond nature, clothes itself in nature, nature conceals on that godly energy. Nature conceals the miracle. The Kanal Sifei, as mentioned before in chapter 5, the change, which means the miracle, that takes place in nature when the miracle clothes itself within nature, is the opposite of the laws of nature. It's the opposite of the characteristics of nature. And therefore, indeed, therefore, in terms of revelation, miracles that defy nature and break nature, in other words, that don't clothe themselves in nature, in that sense, are greater, are in a greater revelation. Why? Because you see the miracle. And a miracle and nature are inherently opposites. So therefore, where do you see the miracle more obviously? In a miracle which breaks nature, which is beyond nature. And when a miracle clothes itself in nature, what does nature do? It conceals the miracle. What's going to be L'Asid Lavi? And the fact that in the time to come, miracles also that are clothed in nature will be in a way that we will see the miracles. In other words, what does that mean? In other words, it means it's not only that there's going to be a technical difference that before we couldn't see it, now we could see it. Why indeed are we going to see it when Mashiach comes? Why when the miracle comes in nature and clothes itself in nature, nature conceals on the miracle, and when Mashiach comes, nature will not conceal on the miracle that's clothed within it? Because in the time to come, nature will be elevated to a higher level. Nature also will be a vessel, a receptacle, will be able to contain and apprehend the revelation of God's infinite light, which will clothe itself in it. So because Teva will become higher, will be elevated, therefore, also miracles that are clothed in nature will be revealed. It's not just that it's a technical difference. Teva is going to change. And because Teva is going to change, it'll become more refined, it'll become more elevated, it becomes a keli, it becomes a vessel that can contain and apprehend immanently, internally, the godly energy that is beyond nature, and therefore we will see it.
But does that mean that the Nissim are going to be, because we said now the Nissim which are in Teva is a low level of Nissim, because Teva is covering over it.
It's not that it's a lower level in Nissim. It is because nature is inherently something which conceals on a miracle. Miracles and nature are opposing forces. So when a nes, which is L'mayla min Teva, comes into being, it breaks nature. A nes, which is Melubish in Teva, what happens? Nature conceals on it. Nature conceals the nes. So you can see it, but it's albeit obscured, right? When Mashiach will come, the Teva of nature will become on a higher level. Why? As a result of Masin Mabed Sin, where we work with, through doing Torah mitzvahs, where we work with nature to the extent that what? It should become a keli for Gililikus. So therefore, since it will become Nis'ala, it will now, that aspect of nature which conceals on a miracle that is clothed in it, falls away. So what do you see? You see the miracle, how it's
There won't be a need for a miracle which is going to break it.
In other words, a miracle that breaks nature is a lower level of miracle. A miracle that clothes itself in nature is a higher level of miracle, a higher level of Getlichkeit. Even today. But the difference is that Nes HaMelubish Shalamayla Teva breaks nature. A Nes HaMelubish Teva, nature conceals to a degree on the Lukus that's Melubish in it. L'Asid Lavi, there will be miracles that are clothed in nature, but in a way that nature will not conceal it. Why? Not only because the Eibishter makes a technical change, because nature itself will be changed, and therefore it won't conceal on the Gilul Lukus Shebazeh. So in other words, the Rebbe articulates this. The innovation, what's going to be when Mashiach comes? It's not only that the chidush, that the innovation, what's going to happen when Mashiach comes is, in the time to come, is that we will see the miracle that's clothed within nature in a revealed way more than we do now. It's not only in the way in the way we perceive it and the way we see it, but even more so, also in the miracle itself. The Hanisim Hamalaboshim Bateva Achshav Him Beifin Shagam Achar Gil Eres of Abligul Shem is Galamanes Nishim Metzias Teva Shem Mitzad Yonu Hepech Gil Eres Abligvul. The way miracles that clothe themselves in nature now, the way they come into nature, they're in such a mode that even after this infinite godly energy that is revealed within nature, revealed in this miracle that's clothed in nature, it's in a mode that Teva retains its characteristic, its system of what? That is nature. It's the opposite of Gilui Rablikvul. Nature inherently does not reveal God's infinite light. It's just that what? That a miracle that's clothed in nature affects what? The conduct of nature. So in other words, nature didn't change its character. It changes its behavior. It's like a Beinani, if you will. Right? The Midas is believing the Midas as they are. It's just, it retains its character. It's just the Lepel Mamish, it behaves as the Eibishter wants. What's going to be when the Nisim that are clothed in nature when Mashiach in the time to come? You'll have both qualities. Indeed, the revelation of God's infinite light, unlimited infinite light, will be within nature. And there will not be any existence whatsoever which will oppose the revelation of the infinite, of Hashem's infinite unlimited light energy. Why? Because Teva then also will become what? A receptacle for Hashem's infinite unlimited light.
Teva will become tzaddik.
Correct. Teva changes. And how do we do that? Through Maseinu Avaseinu, calls Mamesh Chagolos, from Torah Mitzvahs, where the Rebbe is going to say very beautifully soon, Eved Elikim, the Rebbe is going to say a very beautiful pshat. Eved Elikim means, Elikim is a gematria. We'll see in a minute. Yesh Lakasha, chapter 8, we can connect this, Ima Yudu, with that which is known as Brot Nechsidis, Shel Osid Love in the time to come, Tiyan Neshamin is Eines Menaguf. The soul will be sustained by the body. The Achshav, now, Haguf Nizm Menashama, now, the body is sustained from the soul, right? What gives life to what? The soul gives life to the body. Well, the Ositiya, and in the future time, we learned this also in a previous Maimer, in Tavshin Aleph. In the future time, Tiyan Neshamin is Eines Menaguf, in the future, the soul will draw its life, its sustenance from the body. Hagam shegam oz yeguf gashmi, because although when Mashiach comes, there will also be a physical body, just like there is now. Mikol mokim yinizn melakus. The body will be sustained from godliness. We won't need to eat physical food. Not only that, not only will the body not need physical food to live, the body will even be at a higher level than the soul, to the extent that the soul will draw from the body. But the pshat. Why? So the Rebbe says, based on what we just said, what we just explained, we can understand this. When the body becomes nullified before godliness, that reaches higher than the soul being nullified before godliness. Because what's the soul? The whole mitzias of the neshama is what? That's its character. It's spiritual, it's godly, so it's naturally what? Nullified before godliness. The guf is naturally a mitzias yesh. The whole mitzias of the neshama is bitul b'mitzias. That's what a neshama is. Total nullification before godliness. The body is just the opposite. It's a yesh. So when the body becomes batul, and the body becomes batul to such an extent that what? That not only it defies itself, even though it wants to do something, it behaves in a way the way Hashem wants, but even more so, it becomes transformed. As he just said, the teva becomes a keli for lakus. When the guf becomes a keli for this level of godliness, then it reaches higher than what? Than the neshama. And that's why the neshama will gain its sustenance in the body. The nullification of the body to godliness reaches beyond, higher, much higher than the nullification of the soul before godliness. Because the fact that the soul is nullified before godliness, since the soul is spiritual, the nullification of the soul is connected to its existence, to its being. That's what it is. Because it's a soul, that's why it's bottled. But when one affects through working with the body. What affects the body, that the physical body should be nullified before godliness. This bittul is not as a result of what the body is, because on the contrary, the body is a yesh. So why is the guf now bottle? It's bottle because of the godliness. Right? So that's a truer bittul, as he said before, that if my bittul is as a result of the fact that that's what I am, okay. It's not because I'm bottle for godliness, that's what I am. I'm a metzias that is bottle for getlichkeit. When I'm not, and I became a bottle, then Yamud Dorten Herzachon over there, what is more forceful and powerful here is the getlichkeit. That's a truer bittul. So what's the difference? Now, habittul dan Hashem bittul b'metzias. Ubittul da'guf, ubittul yesh. Now, because of the way things work and because of the way the system works, so the bittul of the neshama, the nullification of the neshama before godliness, is total bittul b'metzias. Right? Because that's what the neshama is. And the bittul of the body can only be bittul yesh. The extent that one can reach through Aveda, through working with the body and working with oneself, you reach the level of what? In the guf, bittul yesh. You can only reach that level of what? Nullification of the yesh. But it's not total bittul, right? What's going to be when Mashiach comes? You'll have in the bittul of the guf both qualities, both milas. Ba'habittul da guf tiyanashtei milas. In the nullification of the body, we'll have both qualities. Shahabitulhu mitzado alakus. On the one hand, the nullification will be as a result of what? Of the godliness, because the guf is an entity inherently that is a yesh. And although usually it cannot become bittul b'metzias, but when Mashiach will come, Shabbitul will have the other quality, the other advantage. Shabbitul yiyeh b'chol mitziyusay. The bittul will be in its entire being. Therefore, when Mashiach will come, the soul will take its sustenance from the body. Yeshleimer says the Rebbe, chapter 9. Why indeed are the revelations of Mashiach of the time to come dependent on our work and our deeds and our work, specifically in the time of Golus? Because that's exactly it. Because really and truly, when do we have the true bittul? When is the bittul? Over here, the whole emphasis is, where is the truer bittul? Where's the truer nullification? The truer nullification is mainly in our service of Hashem in the time of exile. Right? When we say Zman HaGolus, it means not only our work and our actions in the time of exile as opposed to the time of Mashiach. It also means our work, our deeds and our actions and our work of serving Hashem in the time of exile as opposed to the time when the Beis HaMikdash stood. The first Beis HaMikdash, second Beis HaMikdash. Dafke Zman HaGolus, that is the main preparation for Mashiach. Why? Because the Abitl Shoy Bizman HaBayis, yes, when the Beis HaMikdash stood, there was Bitl to Lakus. And to a greater extent, more Bitl than there is now in the time of exile. But over there, Kivin Shoy Oz Hasogas Lakus. But when the Beis HaMikdash stood, there was comprehension of godliness. And when Yidden went up, the Sholosh Shagol into the Beis HaMikdash, they actually saw godliness, right? Sholosh Pomim Bashana Yeirah. There were miracles. There was obvious, revealed, godly revelation. But over there, over there, because we felt it and we saw it, so what there was also some discernible existence of the person who comprehended and saw the godliness. But the Bizman HaGol is in time of exile. Particularly in the generation of the heels of Mashiach, where there's less and less revelation of godliness. So when one serves the Eibishter, truly, why is he serving the Eibishter? Because he sees godliness? Because he feels godliness? No! It's bittul the Kabbalah soil. It's a nullification because you accept the yoke of Hashem. And as explained up till now, the nullification of Kabbalah's oil, of the acceptance of the yoke, is not as a result of the person's being, not because the person wants to do so, but because of the godliness. He sets himself aside. He defies, he overrides what he really wants. He sets aside what he wants. And he behaves the way the Eibishter wants because of Kabbalah's oil. It's explained in the Mamorim of the Rabbeim that the pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu was modest, humble before, very modest and very humble before all the people that are on the face of the earth. It says he mainly felt humble and insignificant relative to the generation that's going to be in the heels of Mashiach. That in the times of the heels of Mashiach, the concealments and the covers are going to be so great. And nevertheless, this generation stands with a steadfast forcefulness, determination, and learns state of fulfills mitzvahs with Mesiras Nefesh, with total dedication. Therefore, because of this, as the expression of the Maimer is Moshe Rabbeinu bei sich herabgefallen. Moshe Rabbeinu felt insignificant relative to this generation. Why? What's Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu is Chochmah Atzilus. Moshe Rabbeinu is a being of Bittul. That's what he is. And the service of Yidden in the generation of the hills of Mashiach is what type of Bittul? The Bittul of total dedication and total acceptance of yoke. When Bittul b'Metzias sees the Bittul of Kabbalah Seil and Mesiras Nefesh, it feels insignificant. Because Moshe Rabbeinu recognized that what? I am a Metzias of Bittul. That's what I am. Here's a generation who inherently is not Bittul. It's a goof. It's like a goof, right? And Ava is dedicated. That Moshe Rabbeinu was tremendous for Moshe Rabbeinu. And that is why the revelations that are going to be in the time to come are dependent on our actions and our service of Hashem, specifically in the time of Golus, in exile, when there is no revelation of godliness. Why? What's the main innovation, the main speciality in the revelation of godliness when Mashiach comes over the revelations now? That what? That the highest revelations of godliness will become manifest in nature and in the body itself. Where in this sense, their nullification is not as a result of who they are, of what they are, but rather because of the godliness. And this revelation comes about and is brought about specifically through a nullification of the acceptance of yoke and total dedication in Zman HaGolus when things are dark and there's no revelation and there's no Gililikus. Nevertheless, we serve the Eibishter with total dedication. That heralds, that brings down what? The revelation of godliness within nature and within the goof, which is going to be lost in loving. Continue with Shem tomorrow. Yeah.